you have to be a monster. Everyone says that you should be harmless and virtuous and should not harm anyone. That you should curb your competitive instinct, that you shouldn't try to win. You don't have to be too aggressive. You don't have to be too assertive. You have to want to take a back seat. And it's all wrong. You have to be a monster, an absolute monster, and then you have to learn to control the monster in yourself. If you put yourself in a new situation, then new genes will encode new proteins and build new neural structures of the nervous system. To some extent, the same thing happens when you exercise, because your muscles react to the load, but your nervous system does the same thing. So imagine how many potentials there are in your genetic code. And then, if you get into a new situation, the stress caused by that particular situation will unlock those genes and then create new parts of you. And it's incredibly cool. After all, who knows how much is locked up inside you? The best men I've ever met are very dangerous people. A harmless person is not a good person. A good person is a very, very dangerous person who keeps it under voluntary control. Women don't like harmless men. They despise them, they like to laugh at them. What women want is dangerous and civilized men. And they want to help civilize them, like in Beauty and the Beast. If you are harmless, you are not virtuous. You're just as harmless as a rabbit. The rabbit is not virtuous. He just can't do anything but just be eaten. There's nothing good about it. If you're a monster, but you don't act like a monster, that's when you're virtuous. But you're still a monster, and you have to be constantly aware of it. Harry Potter is like that too. He has flaws, he is hurt, there is evil in him. He can talk to snakes, he breaks the rules all the time, he's naughty. But you know, he has a good reason to break the rules. If he didn't break the rules, he wouldn't have achieved the ultimate goal. Yes, it's very strange, but the hero should be like that. The hero must be a monster, but controlled by a monster like Batman. And again, in the Harry Potter stories, you see that evil has touched him, right? And in fact, there is a fragment in his soul, as black as it is possible at all. That's why he can talk to snakes. But without this, he would not have been able to win, and this is absolutely correct. Psychologically, if you can't think like an evil person, then you are defenseless against such people, because they will go where you can't imagine. And then they will win. And that's why the best men I've ever met have always been strong. Even when I was in high school and junior high, because most of my friends dropped out by about the 10th grade, and many of them were guys who were developing physically. One of my friends was kicked out when he threw a physical challenge to a physical education teacher. It wasn't difficult for my friend to confront him, but he was expelled anyway. I noticed that often children whose character I admired were expelled from school. They were stronger guys who were just tired of following the rules. And then they would leave and work on oil rigs or something like that. And it was really hard work, so it doesn't look like they were taking the easy way out. A harmless person does not mean a good person. A good person is a very, very dangerous person who keeps it under voluntary control. If you recall the story of Beauty and the Beast, then Beauty is not interested in a guy who was not a monster. She is interested in a guy who is a monster. And this is absolutely correct. She is interested in a guy who, being a monster, can be civilized and disciplined. There are no safe places here, and the next question is, do you really want a safe place? Is that what you really want? Do you want to be so weak? Do you want to be always protected from threats? What kind of life is this? You're a paralyzed rabbit in a hole. I believe that the first paradox of all, which was discovered by the Buddha, but also very clearly stated in Christianity, is that the solution to the problem of tragedy and anger is the willingness to face them face to face. Who the hell would ever guess that? This is a completely paradoxical assumption. So why does it work? The more you confront the two of them, the more you grow, And maybe you can grow so much that you will actually become more than chaos and malice itself. And can you think, what kind of evidence does this have? And it's simple. That's what people do. This is how we learn every time. When you introduce your child to something new, a playground, for example, what is he exposed to? Chaos and malice. Children play and develop each other, make friendships and all that. But in the playground, there is the complexity of the social structure and the viciousness of bullies. It's right there, and you throw your child in there and tell him to adapt. And he succeeds. The playground is a difficult place, and the child can adapt. But how much can this be expanded? Is it possible to expand this from chaos, order, and malice in the playground to chaos, order, and malice as such? That's the question. I don't think there is any reason to answer this question in the negative, because we don't know the person fully. And this is a problem that already has a solution. So for example, what happens in Buddhist history is that the Buddhist world is collapsing in the same way as the world of Adam and Eve is collapsing, a consequence of the repeated effects of mortality and death. What happens to the Buddha is that he realizes that the small and protected city that his father built for him, the walled garden, is exactly the same motive as in the story of Adam and Eve. No kind of protection can exist, and he gradually discovers this. The same thing happens with children. They go outside, explore the limits, run away. But at some point they discover the limit, run away, and the parents have nothing to say to them. Because they have reached the same limit as parents who ask, Oklahoma, what are you going to do with your life? How are you going to act in this archetypal universe? Your parents can only say that you should identify yourself with the corresponding archetypal figures. But one day, there comes a moment, and it becomes a problem that they can't solve. And now it's time to face the bitter truth. But to understand this in more detail, think of it as an opportunity to observe your own indignation. You will be offended and embittered in many situations because you don't get what you want. And if you observe this resentment and bitterness, you will see that they generate fantasies that can be incredibly dark. And it can be very scary. And you may not want to admit to yourself that you are really capable of such fantasies, aggressive feelings. But the fact is that if these aggressive feelings, impulses, and fantasies are integrated into your character, it's like you're starting a dialogue with a part of yourself that can be very strong and dangerous. And it's really useful to be dangerous. Because if you can be dangerous, you often don't have to be. Often evil is done by weak people, for example, weak men who become rapists. This is a common phenomenon. It's an act of violence, but it's born out of weakness, not strength. So in any case, be honest with your indignation and watch yourself for what you really are. Be attentive, as if you don't know yourself, as if hidden demons may lurk in you.